Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the bullwhip effect and how it's going to impact the real estate market. This is a question that has been asked to me quite a few times to describe the bullwhip effect inside of the housing market and what I see happening from it. Now, really, I believe that most of this information you could probably apply to just about anything out there, whether you're talking microchips, potato chips, cars, furniture, clothing, whatever it is that's out there. You could probably, again, use this information and apply it to many parts of the economy. Now, we're going to talk just a little bit about real estate here, and we're going to talk about prices. Now, nobody knows where prices are going to go. Now, a lot of people feel that they're going to go down. Some say that they're going to go up. Some say sideways for a while. Up, down, sideways, who knows? Nobody knows what the future is going to say. But we're going to just kind of take the assumption that we are at a low for prices, okay? Now, the reason why I take this assumption is because we are seeing the interest rates begin to peak out. I've even seen mortgage rates come down a little bit. But really, what I have, the biggest idea as far as prices not going down is the fact that we have a lack of inventory. And that's really where this bullwhip effect is relevant when it comes to the future real estate market. Okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's assume that this is prices, this line that I draw, right? Now, for whatever reason, we have a gap in production. Production falls dramatically, whether it was done on purpose, like during the pandemic, or you have issues like maybe wildfires or, government impacts or something like that, right? I mean, there's all kinds of issues to why you would see production fall. But we're just going to say that production has fallen during the time that these prices are low. I mean, again, there could be all kinds of reasons for this. I mean, even the prices being low themselves can be a reason why production is falling. But it's going to start here on this timeline with production falling, right? That's what we're going to end up seeing at the very beginning of this. Now, as time moves on, what's going to end up happening is that inventory is going to fall as well, right? So inventory falls after production falls, right? So now we got those two running down the timeline, right? This is as prices have, pretty much finding their bottom here. Now, as time goes on, eventually what happens is that prices start to move up due to supply and demand forces. So we got supply versus demand. Oops, demand. Yeah, you can't see it very well. But you got supply versus demand now taking place. Okay, those are going to start causing the prices to go up because we have low inventory and there's not a lot of production taking place, right? So give this time, and what will happen is that the lack of inventory, right, will cause prices to continue to rise as the supply demand imbalances are causing those prices to move up. What will then take place is new investment, right? New investment will begin to take place as these prices begin to move up. That's because they're trying to take advantage of the prices, right? As the prices are moving up, they're thinking to themselves, wow, if I buy it today or if I produce it today, by the time I go to sell it, I could probably sell it for even more than what's taking place now. This is, again, as the prices are moving up. And this bullwhip effect could take years. Like years, even decades, even longer, who knows, right? Some of it can happen very quickly, like it did in the lumber market, but other industries like cars or houses or something like that, these things don't land at the same timelines, right? So they have their own timeline that's takes place. So anyway, as the new investment takes place, what you'll end up having is new production will then become available. Is available. Right? And that's when peak prices will peak out. Once the stuff becomes available again, prices will then find their plateau. They'll find their peak, right? Because nothing goes up forever unless you have a hyperinflation scenario, which was very possible, but that's not what's taking place at this time. So prices are going to peak out. What ends up happening there is because of all the new investment that was taking place, what you're going to end up having is that as the prices peak out, an overproduction. Right? Overproduction begins to take place, right, as those prices are peaking out. And then what ends up happening is supply and demand forces begin to kick in again, right? Supply versus demand begins to kick in, and prices begin to fall due to the oversupply and the low demand that is happening from it. Now, if demand kept going, then the prices would keep going up. But generally what ends up happening is you have an overproduction that takes place and demand begins to fall, right? So now as these prices begin to fall, prices fall, going down, production begins to drop as well, because nobody knows if they produce the products today, if they're going to be able to sell them into the future for the price that they are selling for today. So as prices are falling, production begins to fall as well. And this is the bullwhip effect, as it makes this kind of, whipsaw through the economy. And it'll keep doing that over and over again until it finds equilibrium. So now when we think about this little chart here that I drew that you can't really read because I have terrible handwriting and I'm using this here marker, but when we think about it, right now we have production within the real estate market falling, right? Like the builders are not excited about it. Look, and this isn't just happening here in the United States. I was reading an article earlier out of Germany. I think it was a Bloomberg article coming out of Germany, talking the exact same thing that's taking place here in the United States, right? Labor cost, input cost, all the costs that are going into building this house are making it too expensive for the buyer out there, plus the high interest rates. So the builders themselves are having cancellation, like to the tune of almost like 50% of what they had on order to build has been canceled. Now you think about it, that's a lot of homes coming out of Germany if you think all these builders are reporting that kind of cancellation. So this is not new production coming online. That's a gap in production that's taken place. That is when production falls, the prices are too low, right? Now, if the prices were at an appropriate spot in which that not only the buyer could be there, but the homes could get built at the same time, then you would see that there would be like a market that would actually be productive, right? You could bring new houses online, even if it might be slow. But right now you have a dropping of buyers' traffic because they simply can't afford it. And the builders are saying, hey, if the labor cost and everything going into this doesn't make it conducive to be a profit, then you're going to see production fall. If production falls, inventory begins to deplete. If inventory depletes, supply and demand imbalances will begin to take place. Even though there's no demand out there because the buyer traffic is falling, we have to think a third of home buyers are buying homes with all cash purchases. All right? That's something to think about. They don't care where interest rates are at. They're not even worried about the price. I mean, I'm sure they are worried about the price, but it's not so much that it prevents them from making a purchase. A third of home buyers. So if inventory continues to fall because the interest rates are elevated and taking the home buyer out of it, the cash buyer is really the one who's determining what these prices are going to be. And if they're there, right, and the inventory is falling, I don't see how it is that the prices would fall along with it. The inventory, supply and demand, right? Low inventory, you still have a demand out there. Now, I understand where a lot of people are coming from when they think back to the great financial crisis and they're like, no, interest rates, whatever, huge housing market crash, builders went out of business. Okay, there was a huge overbuild that was taking place. And I wouldn't even say it was an overbuild, but there was a huge build that was taking place prior to the great financial crisis. That build is one of the reasons why there was so much inventory falling onto the market during the recession. We did not experience that this recent round, right? We have not seen that prior to this recession that's coming up or prior to the pandemic's recession. The inventory for homes, new home construction, has still been fairly muted. I mean, now it has increased over the last few years, and in fact we are building more homes now than I believe that we were prior to the pandemic, but that was still an undersupply of new homes, and the amount of new starts is depleting, not increasing. So yeah, there was some good signs coming, but they're not extraordinarily good inventory build kind of signs. These are still very in the depressive mode. This is something to consider, right? Because if you have a fallen inventory and you have a supply and demand imbalance, eventually you're going to start seeing prices increase. Once those prices increase dramatically, and you find that home sales begin to take place, whether interest rates come down, or for whatever reasons, maybe like longer term loans come out there, but for whatever reason the buyers can come back into it and those prices are elevated like that, the new investment is going to pour into housing. And they're all going to want to take advantage of those high prices. And what you're going to end up from that is that you're going to have a spot in which that the new production becomes available and there's going to be an overbuild. And you'll see prices come down from that. But I don't see where it is inside of the housing market that the new inventory is coming in, right? So as far as I can tell right now, we are still down here in the bottom of this bullwhip effect when it comes to prices and how they're going to increase. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.